The Haskell Free Library is a special place. It stands right on the line between the United States and Canada. If you enter from one door, you are in the U.S. The reading room, where many books are kept, reaches into Canada. For over 100 years, people from both countries could walk freely inside this building. It was a place where the border seemed to disappear. A simple black line on the floor showed where one country ended and another began. This library is a perfect example of how the two countries are connected yet also separate. It helps us see their unique relationship. Many people around the world think the United States and Canada are very much alike. They share the longest peaceful border in the world. People in both countries often speak English, although French is also important in Canada. They watch many of the same TV shows and movies, listen to similar music, and even cheer for teams in the same sports leagues. To a quick observer, they can seem almost identical. However, beneath this appearance of sameness, the USA and Canada have important differences. We can think of them like two siblings. Siblings grow up close to each other, often look a bit alike, and share many experiences. They care for each other. But each sibling also develops their own personality, their own ideas, and their own way of looking at the world. They are fundamentally close, but they are not the same. They have their own stories. This book will explore what makes these two large North American neighbors distinct. We will look at how each country began. One country was formed through a revolution, a big break from its past rulers. The other country grew and changed slowly through evolution. These different beginnings created very different foundations for each nation. We will examine how these differences show up in their daily lives. For example, we will compare their healthcare systems and how they handle gun ownership. We will also look at their economies and how they welcome people from other countries. Their cultures, their favorite sports, and how they see themselves in the world also show these unique traits. Even with these distinct ways, the United States and Canada remain very important to each other. They must work together on many shared problems, such as taking care of the environment and managing their large trade relationship. By understanding their differences, we can better appreciate their connection. This book will help us see that living side by side does not mean being the same. It is a story of two nations, like two siblings who navigate the world with their own identities, while always being linked by geography and history. 2. Different beginnings. Both the United States and Canada began in a similar way. They were British colonies. European people came to these lands, once home to indigenous peoples. They came to find money, religious freedom, or a new start. For many years, the early colonies in both places shared similar ways of making money, like fur trading, fishing, and farming. They also faced similar problems in the often cold weather. But in the year 1776, 13 British colonies in what is now the United States made a big choice. They said they wanted to be free from Britain. This event was called the American Revolution. It was more than just a fight for land. It was a new way of thinking. The people wanted a government where they, the citizens, had the power. The Declaration of Independence, a very important paper, said that all people are equal. It also said that everyone has certain rights that cannot be taken away. These rights include life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This idea put the individual person at the center. It meant the government should serve the people and protect their rights. After this, the United States wrote its Constitution. This document set up a government with different parts. These parts were designed to check each other and limit the government's power. There was also a Bill of Rights that clearly stated what the government could not do to individuals. This system made sure that no one part of the government became too strong. Canada took a different path. When the American colonies fought for freedom, many people in those colonies chose to stay loyal to the British king. These people were called Loyalists. They moved north to Canada. They did not like the idea of revolution or too much democracy too quickly. These Loyalists helped form Canada's English-speaking population. So Canada's story is not about fighting against the king. It is about staying loyal to the government and slowly gaining freedom. Canadians achieved their independence peacefully through talks and changes to their laws rather than a war. These different beginnings are shown in two important phrases. Americans speak of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This phrase focuses on the individual. It shows a hope for personal freedom and that people should be free from too much government power. It means that people should decide their own lives. Canada's 1867 Constitution Act, however, speaks of peace, order, and good government. This phrase shows a focus on the community. It values safety, stability, and good rules for everyone. It means that the government has a larger role in making sure society works well and helps everyone. These different ideas led to different ways of setting up government. The United States created a republic with a strong president. The president is chosen by the people and leads both the country and the government. The president has much power, leading the army, guiding foreign policy, and choosing important judges. These judges, including those in the Supreme Court, serve for life and help shape the laws of the country. Canada, however, is a constitutional monarchy. This means that the British king, King Charles III, is Canada's head of state. A person called the Governor-General represents the king in Canada, but the real power is held by the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is not directly elected by all citizens. Instead, the Prime Minister is usually the leader of the political party that wins the most seats in Canada's Parliament, in the House of Commons. So, the Prime Minister is part of the lawmaking body and leads the government at the same time. This system means that when one party wins many seats, its leader, the Prime Minister, has a lot of power to make laws. The different branches of government work more closely together than in the U.S. system. Also, the Canadian Senate is different from the American one. In Canada, senators are chosen by the Governor-General on the advice of the Prime Minister. They are not elected by the people. They serve until they are 75 years old.
The Canadian Senate is meant to carefully check laws made by the elected House of Commons. It also helps make sure all parts of the country are heard. But the Canadian Senate rarely stops laws from the House of Commons. In the United States, the Senate is a powerful group of elected people. It can, and often does, stop new laws that the President or the House of Representatives want to pass. These government differences show the deep-seated ideas of each country. The American system has separate powers and many ways to stop new laws. This shows the early Americans worry about too much government power. It makes making laws harder because they believed a government that can act fast can also take away people's freedom fast.
The Canadian system, with its joined powers and appointed Senate, shows a trust in responsible government. It also reflects the long tradition of how Parliament works and the King's symbolic role. These different beginnings continue to shape how each nation thinks about itself and its place in the world. 3. Getting sick. When people get sick, they need doctors and medicine. How a country helps its people with health problems tells a lot about what that country values. The United States and Canada have very different ways of providing health care. These differences show important ideas about individual freedom versus caring for everyone in a group. In Canada, health care is mostly for everyone. It is often called Canadian Medicare. It is paid for by taxes. This means that if you are sick, you can go to the doctor or hospital, and you usually do not pay directly for these important services. The government acts like one big insurance company for medical care that people really need. This system helps make sure that all Canadians have access to doctors, no matter how much money they have. The costs are shared by everyone in the country. If someone is wealthy, their taxes help pay for someone who is poorer to get health care. This way, no family should go bankrupt because someone gets very sick. This idea is about sharing risk and responsibility across the entire population. It is a system that tries to be fair and help everyone in the community. Canadians often feel free from the worry of huge medical bills. They can seek necessary care without asking, "Can I afford this?" This reflects a belief that health care is a basic human right. The United States has a different system. Most people get health insurance from their job. Some government programs, like Medicare for older people and people with disabilities, and Medicaid for people with low incomes, also help. But a big part of the system relies on private insurance companies. This creates a complex system where the quality and access to care can be very different depending on where you work, how much you earn, and where you live. Americans often pay less in taxes than Canadians, but they often pay more money out of their own pocket for medical care. They might have to pay a part of their bill, called a deductible or copay, before their insurance pays. Many people in the U.S. also don't have health insurance at all. About 9% of Americans have no insurance, and many more have insurance, but it does not cover enough, making them underinsured. Because of this, medical debt is a main reason why people in the U.S. go bankrupt. This almost never happens in Canada, where the collective system protects people from such financial disaster. Let's look at some numbers to see the impact of these systems. Canada spends about 10 to 11% of its country's money on health care, measured by its gross domestic product, GDP. The United States spends more, over 16% of its GDP. Even though the U.S. spends more, Canada covers all its people. Also, Canadians live longer on average. Life expectancy in Canada is about 82.6 years, while in the U.S. it is about 76.3 years. When it comes to women giving birth, the U.S. has about 33 deaths for every 100,000 births, but Canada has only 11 deaths for every 100,000 births. The number of children who die before age 5 is also higher in the United States. These statistics highlight how the Canadian system, despite lower spending, often achieves better overall health outcomes for its population. These numbers are important, but they also show different ideas about how society should work. Canada's system shows a belief in looking after everyone. It prioritizes that everyone has fair access to health services. This is about the well-being of the entire community, and it is sometimes called a collective responsibility. The system values equity and universal access over individual choice in terms of insurance providers. In the U.S., the system often puts individual choice first. Many Americans believe that people should choose their own health care and be responsible for it. They see this as an important part of personal freedom and liberty. They also believe that competition among private companies helps create new and better medical ideas. The U.S. is known for its advanced medical technologies and research, which often benefits from this market-driven approach. For some Americans, having the government pay for everything, like in Canada, feels like it takes away important freedoms of choice and empowers too many government officials, which is sometimes viewed as socialistic or too much government control. They value the freedom to pick their own doctor and hospital and their own insurance plan. So, the different healthcare systems reflect the core values and founding philosophies of each nation. The American focus on individual liberty, as seen in the phrase life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness from Chapter 2, means people often have more personal responsibility for their health costs, with less direct obligation from the group. The Canadian focus on peace, order, and good government, also from Chapter 2, means the group has a bigger responsibility to ensure everyone's health and stability, even if it means some limits on individual choice in how health care is delivered. These fundamental differences lead to very different daily experiences when people get sick on either side of the border. They show how each country approaches the social contract, the unwritten agreement between people and their government. 4. Society and safety. The United States and Canada, though close neighbors, show important differences in how they see society and safety. This is clear in their views on guns and how they welcome new people. These areas highlight the different ideas that started each country. First, let's look at guns. In the United States, many people see owning a gun as a very important right. This idea comes from the country's history, including the Second Amendment to its Constitution. This amendment talks about the right to keep and bear arms. For many Americans, having a gun means they can protect themselves and their families. It is also linked to ideas of freedom and not letting the government have too much power. Groups like the National Rifle Association, NRA, often share this view, saying guns are symbols of being independent and able to take care of oneself. Because of these beliefs, a large number of American adults own guns, and there are more guns owned by civilians than there are people in the country. Sadly, this also means the United States has a much higher rate of deaths from firearms compared to Canada. Gun homicides are 6 times higher in the U.S. than the overall homicide rate in Canada. For many Americans, personal safety is largely their own job, and they believe the right to carry a gun is key to this. Canada has a different approach to guns. The country does not have a law like the American Second Amendment. Instead, Canada has strict rules about guns set by the government. People who want to own guns must get a license, pass safety training, and certain types of weapons are not allowed. Most Canadians who own guns use them for hunting or sports, especially in rural areas. Guns are generally not seen as a tool for personal protection in the same way they are in the U.S. In Canada, safety is mostly seen as a job for the community and the government. They believe that strong police, clear laws, and working together help keep everyone safe. Limiting gun ownership is seen as a way to make society safer and reduce violence, not as taking away freedom. Each country's view shows a different idea of what a free and safe society looks like. Americans might worry that strict gun laws could lead to problems, while Canadians worry that having many guns can lead to more danger. The second major difference is how each country welcomes immigrants and deals with different cultures. The United States is often called a melting pot. This idea means that when immigrants come to America, they slowly mix together to form one new American culture. They are expected to learn English, take on American customs, and embrace American values. Over time, their original culture might become less important, and they become simply American. The country's motto, E pluribus unum, which means out of many, one, reflects this idea. The focus is on what brings everyone together, like shared laws and language. Canada, on the other hand, is known as a cultural mosaic. This means that immigrants are encouraged to keep their own cultures, languages, and traditions, even while becoming Canadian citizens. You can be Chinese Canadian, Italian Canadian, or from any other background, and still be a part of Canada. Canada was the first country in the world to make multiculturalism an official government policy in 1971.
The Canadian idea is that having many different cultures makes the country stronger and richer. Canada lets in more immigrants compared to its population size than the U.S. Cities like Toronto and Vancouver have many different groups of people living together. The government even offers support for cultural groups and services in many languages to help new people settle in. This approach shows that Canada believes being Canadian can include many different identities, not just one. While the U.S. seeks unity through a common identity, Canada seeks unity through respecting diversity. These different ways of welcoming people show once again how the two countries have different ideas about society and how people should live together. 5. Money and work.
The ways people earn money and the rules around work show more differences between the United States and Canada. Even though their economies are very close, they have different ideas about how money should work in society. The two countries have a very strong trade relationship. They buy and sell many goods and services to each other. In 2024, about $910 billion in goods and services crossed the border. Canada is the biggest buyer of American goods. In many states, Canada is their main foreign customer. This trade is so close that parts for cars might go from Canada to the U.S. to be built, and then the finished cars come back to Canada. This deep link is supported by trade agreements like the USMCA, which make it easier for goods and money to flow between them. Companies also invest in each other's countries, meaning American businesses operate in Canada and Canadian businesses operate in the U.S. One clear difference is labor unions. These are groups of workers who join together to ask for better pay and working conditions. In Canada, about 30% of all workers are part of a union. In the United States, this number is only about 10%. This means Canadian workers often have stronger protections and more say in their jobs. Canadian laws make it simpler for workers to form unions. Because of this, many Canadian workers enjoy better wages, safer workplaces, and more job security. Worker benefits also differ a lot, especially for new parents. Canada has some of the best parental leave programs in the world. New parents can take up to 18 months off from work. During this time, they receive money from employment insurance, which covers 55% of their usual pay for standard leave, or 33% for longer leave. In contrast, the United States offers only 12 weeks of unpaid leave for new parents through a law called the Family and Medical Leave Act. There is no federal law in the U.S. that requires paid leave. This makes the United States the only rich country that does not guarantee paid time off for new parents. Also, Canada's unemployment benefits are usually wider and last longer. Minimum wages in Canada are generally higher when you compare what they can buy. Canadian workers are also more likely to get extra benefits from their jobs, like money for medicines, dental care, or eye care. Another difference is the government's role in business.
Canada has what are called crown corporations. These are companies owned by the government. Examples include Canada Post, which handles mail, and the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, which is a big media company. These crown corporations are meant to work well and sometimes make money, but they also serve a public purpose. They might offer services in distant areas, help unite the country, or provide choices where private companies might not. This shows that Canada believes some important services should not be left only to private businesses. The United States usually prefers private businesses for almost everything. The government owns very few businesses, usually only for things like city power or public transport. The U.S. mostly trusts that private companies and competition in the market will work best. These different ways of doing things affect how wealth is shared and how easy it is for people to move up in life. Canada has less income inequality than the United States. This means the gap between rich and poor people is smaller in Canada. While this gap has grown in both countries, it has not grown as much in Canada. Even more important is social mobility. This is how likely it is for a child born into a poor family to become middle class or rich when they grow up. Studies show that social mobility is much higher in Canada. A child born into the poorest 10% of families in Canada can expect to reach about the 40th percentile in income as an adult. In the U.S., a child from the poorest families often reaches only the 33rd percentile. This means it is harder for poor children in the U.S. to become wealthy. Also, children born into rich families in the U.S. are more likely to stay rich than those in Canada. This suggests that once you are poor in the U.S., it is harder to leave poverty, and once you are rich, it is easier to stay rich. Why is this? Many reasons are possible. Canada has a more generous social safety net, like its universal health care system, which means people do not go broke because they get sick. Higher education, like university, is also more affordable in Canada. These things help people improve their lives. Some people even say that the American dream, which is the idea of anyone achieving success through hard work, might actually be more reachable in Canada. The economic choices of each country reflect their basic ideas. The United States values individual freedom and allows more differences in wealth, hoping it will lead to new ideas and growth. Canada values peace, order, and good government, so it uses government more to reduce inequality and ensure everyone has a fair chance. Both countries have strong economies, but they work in different ways based on these core ideas. 6. Daily life and fun. Every day, people in both the United States and Canada enjoy many of the same things. They watch similar movies, listen to similar music, and follow the same sports. However, there are some clear differences in how they live and what they find fun. American culture is very popular in Canada. When you turn on the TV in a Canadian city, you often see American shows. Many movies, songs, and even social media trends come from the United States. A lot of the TV made in English-speaking Canada gets money from American companies. This means Canadian people watch a lot of American stories and listen to American voices. Because of this, Canada has rules to protect its own culture. These rules are called Canadian content, or CanCon. The government asks TV and radio stations to play a certain amount of Canadian shows and music. For example, some TV stations must show Canadian programs for more than half their airtime. These rules help make sure that Canadian stories and songs can still be heard. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, known as the CBC, is a special company owned by the Canadian government. It helps make Canadian shows in both English and French. The CBC works to share Canadian news and culture with people across the country. Many people think it is very important for Canada's identity. Americans often think of their country as special and unique. This is called American exceptionalism. They believe the United States has a special job to help democracy and freedom around the world. Americans show their pride openly. You can see flags everywhere, and people often say a pledge to their flag in schools. Holidays are big celebrations. American presidents often speak about God blessing their nation. At sports games, people stand for the national anthem, and military planes might fly overhead. Americans usually feel very proud to say their country is the best. Canadians, on the other hand, have a quieter identity. It is often described as not American. When you ask a Canadian what it means to be Canadian, they might talk about things like being polite, having universal health care, or loving hockey. They might say they are less aggressive than Americans. This can make Canada feel like a younger sibling next to a louder, bigger brother.
Canadians often watch American TV and read American news a lot more than Americans pay attention to Canadian things. Still, Canadians want to be seen as different, and they are proud of things like their health care and their way of living together with many cultures. One thing that truly shows Canadian identity is hockey. For many Canadians, hockey is not just a game. It is a big part of who they are. Children learn to skate and play hockey in parks, on frozen ponds, and in local rinks. People watch games with great passion, talk about them all the time, and see hockey as something that belongs to them. When Canada plays against the United States in hockey, it feels like more than just a game. It feels like a fight for national pride. For example, when Canada won a big game against the United States in 2025, many millions of Canadians watched it. The former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, even sent a message saying that you cannot take away Canada's country or their game. This shows how important hockey is as a symbol of Canada. Hockey reminds Canadians of living in a cold place, working together in their communities, and often winning against their bigger neighbor. It has stories about playing on icy ponds and heroes who are strong and skilled. Even so, most of the big hockey teams in the world's best league, the National Hockey League, are in American cities. This makes some Canadians feel a little worried that even their own sport is becoming more American.
These daily things, from what people watch on TV to how they feel about their country and their favorite sport, show how the United States and Canada are close but also very different in their daily lives and what they enjoy for fun. 7. The future together. The United States and Canada are like two family members who live next door. They have their own ways, but their futures are connected. Looking ahead, both countries will need to work together on many important things. One big challenge they share is climate change. The world's weather is changing, and this affects both nations. The Arctic region, which borders both countries, will see new changes. There will be new paths for ships and new chances to get natural resources. But these changes also threaten the environment and the native people who live there. Both countries must work together to protect places like the Great Lakes, which they share. They both want to move to clean energy, so they will need to help each other with this big change. 7. The future together. The United States and Canada are like two family members who live next door. They have their own ways, but their futures are connected. Looking ahead, both countries will need to work together on many important things. One big challenge they share is climate change. The world's weather is changing, and this affects both nations. The Arctic region, which borders both countries, will see new changes. There will be new paths for ships and new chances to get natural resources. But these changes also threaten the environment and the native people who live there. Both countries must work together to protect places like the Great Lakes, which they share. They both want to move to clean energy, so they will need to help each other with this big change.
Managing these environmental problems across the border will need strong teamwork for many years. Trade between the two nations will also stay very important. Their economies are closely linked. Many jobs in both countries depend on goods moving back and forth across the border. For example, parts made in Canada might go to American factories, and then finished products might return to Canada. Stopping this flow of trade would harm both countries. Leaders in both nations know this, even if they sometimes have disagreements. This strong trade relationship will be a key part of their future together. Their cultures will also continue to mix. American movies, music, and TV shows are very popular in Canada. But Canadian culture also moves south. American audiences watch Canadian hockey games, and they enjoy Canadian comedians. People and ideas move across the border, making both societies richer. Canada will keep working to make sure its own stories and voices are heard, even with a lot of American culture around. This back-and-forth cultural influence is a part of who they are. In a world that is always changing and sometimes unpredictable, the friendship between the United States and Canada is very important. Both countries believe in democracy, even if they practice it differently. They share many important values. Because of this, their partnership will be even more valuable in the coming years. They face new challenges like economic problems, new technologies, and threats from other countries. Working together will help them both. The line on the floor of the Haskell Library shows this clearly. It is a border that separates them, but it also brings them together. The two countries are distinct, meaning they are different, but they are also connected. They share a continent and a history they did not choose. And they share a future that they must build together. Their paths might be different, but they will often run side by side, and sometimes they will meet to face shared problems. 8. A final look. The journey through the Haskell Free Library, with its unique borderline, brings us to the end of our exploration. This special library, a place where two nations meet on a wooden floor, helps us understand the United States and Canada more deeply. We have seen how these two countries, like close siblings, share much in common, but also have very important differences. The United States started with a bold step, a revolution. Its founders wanted complete freedom from a king. They built a nation on the idea of individual liberty and the chance to find happiness. They believed in a government that should not be too strong to protect people's rights. This path created a country known for its energy, new ideas, and strong belief in personal success. However, this focus also led to challenges, like a wide gap between rich and poor, and sometimes people feel less supported by the community. Canada took a different route, one of evolution rather than revolution. It slowly grew into an independent nation, keeping some ties with Britain. Canada chose a path based on peace, order, and good government. This means the well-being of the whole community is a key goal. The government plays a larger role in making sure everyone is cared for. This has helped Canada build a society with strong social safety nets like universal health care and generally less social inequality. But this approach also means Canadians often think about their national identity, especially when living next to a large and powerful neighbor like the United States. These different starting points led to different ways of doing things. In politics, the U.S. has a strong, independently elected president. Canada has a prime minister whose power comes from leading the party with the most seats in Parliament. Their healthcare systems show this core difference clearly. Canada's system ensures that everyone receives necessary medical care, paid for taxes. The U.S. system relies mostly on private insurance, putting more responsibility on individuals to choose and pay for their own care. These choices reflect each country's main values. Individual choice and opportunity in the U.S. versus collective well-being and security in Canada. Even daily life is shaped by these founding ideas. Think about gun laws. In the U.S., many people see gun ownership as a basic right for personal protection. This is a very strong part of American culture. In Canada, the laws are much stricter. Guns are seen more as tools for hunting or sport.
This difference highlights how Americans often rely on themselves for safety, while Canadians look to the government and community rules for overall public safety. The way both countries welcome immigrants also shows their distinct values. The U.S. has often been called a melting pot. It means that newcomers are expected to blend into one American culture over time. Canada is known as a cultural mosaic.
It encourages immigrants to keep their own cultural traditions and languages, adding to a rich and diverse national identity. Both approaches aim for a strong nation, but they go about it in different ways. In the economy, while both nations are deeply connected through trade, their governments play different roles. Canada generally has stronger labor unions and more generous benefits for workers, such as paid leave for new parents. The Canadian government also sometimes runs important services through crown corporations. The U.S., on the other hand, usually favors less government involvement in business, believing that markets work best with fewer rules. These differences affect everything from how much workers are paid to how easy it is for people to move up in society. Canada generally shows higher social mobility, meaning it's easier for someone born poor to become rich. Culturally, Canada lives next to a giant. American movies, TV shows, and music are very popular in Canada. To protect its own culture, Canada has rules that make sure Canadian stories and artists are also seen and heard. While Americans often talk about their country being exceptional or the best, Canadians are more modest. Their identity is often described as not American. However, one area where Canadian pride shines brightly is hockey. It is a deeply important part of their national story and how they see themselves. Standing on that black line in the Haskell Library, with one foot in each nation, we can feel both the clear differences and the strong connections. The line is simple, yet it represents deep choices about society and government. It reminds us that the United States and Canada are truly distinct nations, each choosing its own path based on different ideals. But like siblings, they are bound together. They share a huge border, common history, and many interests. They face shared problems like climate change, and their economies rely on each other. Their cultures continue to mix and influence each other. As democratic nations, they will need to work together in a world that is always changing. The story of these two siblings teaches us that being close does not mean being the same. Their differences make them both unique and powerful. Understanding these unique paths helps us appreciate their relationship and their shared future on this continent. What aspect of the U.S. or Canada do you find most interesting or surprising after learning about their differences?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second. and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.